Pretty nice. Although I may disappear since it's blue, but I have a green screen. We're live 6:34 before 7 o'clock, so we're here a little bit early. Today I want to talk about the following thing. I have a choice. I've been looking around online for different kinds of vehicles because what I want to do is I want to actually now run the little AMR 500 supercharger on something. So I want to actually put it on a motor. People want to see power. That was obvious from all of the comments that I got doing the airflow testing. I still stand by doing all the airflow testing so we could then get data and figure out. In fact, we're going to add more to that because we've got some coming from the Kenny Bell blower dyno, which I'm very, very excited about. That will be awesome. So I want to get that data also, but I want to actually put the supercharger on something and show that it makes power and show how much power it makes. And then also show while we're making power, how much does, what is the temperature? What is the airflow? What's happening here? How much power can we actually make? We want to hear it, we want to hear it, but we also want to see what it's doing. Hey, it's making this much power. It added 5 pounds of boost or 8 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever it is. And then also added, in doing that, increase the power output by this much power. We know that there's going to be some power consumption associated with driving the blower. We've already proven that in the first video. We're going to see that again on the Kenny Bell blower dyno. But how much do we gain? It's a cheap little supercharger, but what does it really do? So that's what guys want. They're like, everyone was like, yeah, why didn't you just run the airflow through the motor? I'm like, it's a 440 horsepower motor and it's a 150 horsepower blower, and that's not going to work. What we need to do is get it on something where the 150 horsepower worth of airflow can benefit something. So that's what I want to do. So here's my choice. And this is going to be our poll for tonight. So hopefully you guys are ready to answer a question. So should I adapter for the turbo motor, 1.0 liter, 3-cylinder? Okay, so the choice is, should I make an adapter for the turbo sprint motor that I have already? It's a good running motor, and we know that because it came out of the car that I was driving at the time. We know that it's a good running motor. It has a little turbo on it, and it has all the factory stuff on it. And what I would like to do is make an adapter plate so that I can adapt that motor to a small block Chevy or the V6 or some other kind of bell housing that would make it easy to do. Should I do that instead of spending the money on a new car? Because I have to spend a couple of grand, $2,000-$3,000 probably, to get a decent running Metro or something like that, so that I could then put the supercharger on it and run it. And if I do that, I have, some of the things I'm worried about is I don't have a standalone management system to make that combination work. So I can't get in and tune everything. So which one of those should I do? Should I just make an adapter for the turbo motor, or should I buy the sprint motor? So you'll answer accordingly. The other thing to think about is if I run this turbo sprint motor on the engine dyno, and we can run it with the Holly, I'm hoping. I don't see why we couldn't. If we can do that, I have a turbo and I have a blower. We can compare them, and then we can combine them. And that's not something I could do that on a running, driving Metro, but I would only feel comfortable doing something like that if I had total control of the management system. So we would have to see. So let me know what you guys think. We'll start our poll here. We'll get that going. And honestly, I could do an adapter plate in a day or 2 days or a few days anyways to get it running. And then if I could get that motor running, I could do lots of testing with it, because we could do, I've done lots and lots of chassis dyno testing with it. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of that data. I have some of it from my chassis dyno. A lot of that was done at other places. I have some of the stuff from West Tech that we did there. But the stuff that I did with Jimmy back at HP Performance, I don't have access to that data anymore. And that's all the data that we did before we went and set the land speed records. And I also don't have access to my information that I have where I logged everything that I did, all the modifications, what they did, how much power they changed, what the boost levels were, what the charge temperatures were. All of that stuff was lost with my last computer malfunction. So I don't have a lot of that data, but we could regenerate all of that. So it would be cool. And there's nothing saying that I couldn't, if I got a Metro and was driving it around, we put the blower on it and ran boost from a supercharger, that we couldn't also put a turbo on there, and then maybe eventually both of them, which would be cool. But like I said, I would like to be able to run it with something that that we have control over. I want control over the timing, and then obviously the airfield. That would be all good stuff. So let's see what you guys got going on for tonight. Hooligan, what's up? Hooli. Modular power, yep. In fact, the Admiral, the video that I'm working on right now is a modular Ford. It's a Coyote one. Coyote versus LS, the best kind. My 300 inline 6 keeps knocking when it's cold, warm, not as bad. Goes in gear and very rhythmic. We get into the bottom end soon, but it's in a van. MR500 on a 3A92 Mitsubishi engine. I'm not familiar with that. John Deere AMR lawnmower. Put it on a Corsair 2.7 or a VW. There's a lot of them. I got excited. I saw like a Ford Festiva, I think. And then I saw a couple of Yaris's and all kinds of stuff for sale. Julius, I'd make the adapter for the dyno over buying a vehicle. Adapter's got to be cheaper. It definitely will be. I mean, you're talking about, I would make it out of steel, so it's not going to be very expensive. It only needs to be probably 3/8 plate or something. Building an LQ4, currently getting ready to buy some parts with my 243 heads. An LQ4 is a good motor with 243 heads. I've been thinking possibly piston skirt broke, but I'll find out. Yeah, you could look at maybe the skirt is collapsed, or he broke a ringland is also possible. Sprint motor on the dyno is more controlled, so better data. I agree. It would be definitely better back-to-back stuff. Too expensive for a whole car, though those have dumb resale. You would think with gas getting expensive that those things would be desirable, but there's a lot of them out there. But the problem is most of the ones I've run across are always like, oh, it blew a head gasket, but everything else is there. It's good. It's just, you just need to put it together, or it needs a transmission or a clutch or whatever. I'm like, I don't really want to buy a project, but if you buy a car, condition of the clutch and the trans could affect the result. Yeah, I'm not as worried about the transmission so much, but the clutch definitely. It would definitely have to have enough clutch to support something where you're doing a 50% increase in power. The G would be easiest to do a blow-through carb and standalone ignition controller. Yeah, if I could get a carbureted one, that would actually be easy, because then we just turn the distributor. That's very easy. Pulling up to a service call, 351 Windsor with an XE268 cam and Victor Junior heads and intake. What horsepower should I expect? I don't remember doing that on a 351, but the Victor Junior heads are stock. I'm thinking that it's low 400s probably. LS swap in a Tornado. Is it transverse mounted? We have a Coyote and an LSA. Both of those are good. .3A92 is a 3-cylinder aluminum engine. I think very light, around 200 horsepower, possible for grenades. Makes like 70 or 80 stock. Has VVT. What did that come in? 3A92 Mitsubishi. Let's do a search here. The 3.9 engines are as range of all 3-cylinder engines from Mitsubishi that were joint developed me with the A4A9, so that's a 4-cylinder one. They were in the Colt Super Minis. I don't think I've ever seen a 3-cylinder Colt. Is that not in the US version? A rotary already makes really too much power, I think. Son's got a Coyote Gen 1 with a phase 3 blower ready to build his LQ4 408 chum. Who's boss? Thinking maybe Wiseco Pistons. Nice ACC, K1 rods and cranks for boost. Yeah, all of that will work. A 408 should make more NA power than a Gen 1 Coyote does. And so if your guys are both adding boost, it's going to be a function of how much boost you have to add. Better to make an adapter. The Mirage engine is a Jatco CVT and no sold as automatic. CVT is just terrible in general. Yeah, I don't want to do something on the chassis dyno with an automatic transmission. It tends to be too problematic. Head gasket is a 2-hour job in a Metro. They're if that's the only problem. The problem is that when you get something like that, the thing that they admit to, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the thing that they're not admitting to. It's the modern Mirage engine, about 10-year run so far. Okay. Just out of Buick Olds Pontiac. Just need a Buick Olds Pontiac adapter for the Chevy Sprint turbo motor. Probably need something different than that. Buick Olds Pontiac is the same bell housing as the small block Chevy. Or I should say we can run a Chevy on the Buick Olds Pontiac bell housing that we have. Gen 4 rotating into an LQ9, looking to up compression. Also, anything specific be seeking or watching out for? Isn't your LQ9 a Gen 4 already? Otherwise, doing Gen 3, Gen 4 stuff, I don't know what crank you have. Are you doing the whole crank in there? If you're taking the whole thing out, the crank rods and pistons, and putting it in another block, that's okay. If you're mixing and matching the Gen 3 crank with the Gen 4 rods and pistons, then you're going to need to rebalance it. Of 80 Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais Turbo 400 and an LS out of a 99 Firebird. Any suggestions? Is the 1980 Cutlass Calais, is that a rear-wheel drive car? I think it is, isn't it, right? Because later on, that was after that they did the... Yeah, so that's yeah, so you could swap that in there. '89 through '92 geometric ignition is already standalone. You can take it off the TBI and put a 2-barrel Holley on it or a single barrel directly to it with an adapter. But there's no computer control on the ignition at all. What do you think about inline 6-cylinder 4-liter Ford engines? I don't know anything about them. I don't think I've ever done any. I've never been around them. I've never done any testing with them. I wonder what kind of compression I should run this 408 LS with 20 psi, but it's all dependent on fuel. So if you can run good fuel on it, then you could run 10-1 or something. Oh, Kevin, I see what you're doing. Talking about the Turbo Hydro 425 transaxle. So are you going to connect it to that transaxle? That'll be cool. Gen 4 is not, they don't have to be aluminum. A lot of guys forget to run drive shaft loops and get drive shaft surprise. You can tune thousands of cars, and the drive shaft surprise always shakes you a bit. I thought that I had a drive shaft issue, and I got under it, and it's turned out to be not the issue. When I look back at one of the rear tires, I found out what the issue was. Urgy's in the house. Clean up both today. Change the oil. Smart car has a small turbo. Just picked up an 06 LQ4 from a junkyard for $1,000. Yeah, they're not a 6-liter, but a 6-liter is a good one to find. FSU, what was your thing? Let's see. Oh. If you have an LS1 and you want to add more torque to it, the way that you do that is with compression or displacement or boost, or it already has a fairly long runner length, but that's not a very good intake manifold, that early LT1 intake manifold. There are better ones, but nothing that's going to substantially increase low speed power. But almost any camshaft you put in there is going to add peak torque. The two-wheel drive 07 2500 Classic LQ4. Would you start with a cam upgrade or headers and exhaust? A cam is going to have the biggest change in any sort of LS engine family. Intake motor, the predecessor of the Bear, got good engine, strong and reliable. Not on 88 to 92. It has a vacuum advance can and a magnetic hookup. Yeah, mine is an 87 and it has a vacuum advanced boost retard distributor on it to directly trigger the coil. Also, I think the Sprint turbo distributor may bolt on. Okay. And that would be nice if we could run the blower with that motor. And I was kind of hoping we could do that just as a draw through with a carburetor on it. And that would also make it easy. We love that in Australia. Made 400 horsepower stock unopened on 10 PSI. Good. Any chance I could take you to look? Any chance I could convince you to take a look at the Saab 2.8 liter V6? We run them pretty decently. I don't know that I've ever even heard of that. Uh, 2.8 or V6 turbo. Is that the asymmetrical turbo one? And for some reason, I was thinking that all the Saabs. Well, now I knew that the asymmetrical one was not, but I always think of 4-cylinder for Saab turbo stuff. Oh, I can be honest with you and say I've never even seen one of those, or never looked at one on the engine or at the wrecking yard. Anything swapped from the port fuel GM 3.6 liter V6s? So what swaps over? Is it just injectors or something, or is that the same engine family? Do intake manifolds, or what do you think about a 4-stroke K1 crankshaft? I think that they're really good. Sending my Regal to the scrapyard. Made some fun videos beating on it. Thing was really tough. Isn't the Saab a V6? I was wondering about the displacement. 2.8 is pretty common. Isn't the Saab 2.8 or V6 made by GM? Probably a high feature one. Rather than a Geo Metro, what about using a Chevette chassis rear-wheel drive setup? So I'm going to convert the Chevette to rear-wheel drive. I did see a Chevette, but it was pretty ratty though. Admiral, is it going to affect idle quality and anything like that to have a longer, larger diameter cold air intake versus a small, short rim? It's not going to affect idle quality at all. The only thing that will affect idle quality is if you change the tubing diameter and you happen to have a mass air meter in it, then you could affect that signal. But otherwise, it's not going to affect idle at all. It would affect it more having cold air versus hot air if you've managed to do that with your system, but it won't affect idle quality at all. At least I've never seen it do that. It didn't do that on any of them. We tested them on way back when I did the stuff on Hondas. We ran 3 different styles of air intake on the Honda and ran them on the chassis dyno, ran them on the street, ran them for top speed, monitoring the air temperature and all that, and the power output on all of them. It has an effect on power output, though. At least it did on the 4-cylinder. It didn't seem to have that effect. We couldn't make a pronounced effect on the VX when I tested it on that, because I tested a bunch of different diameters, and I tried different diameters on the LS also in front of the throttle body on the engine dyno, and I couldn't show any sort of dramatic effect on the air inlet system before the throttle body on the LS I was testing it on. Hooligan, any experience with aftermarket LS oil barbells? I've seen one with 1 O-ring, 2 O-rings, 3 O-rings. Yeah, they have ability goodness ones and stuff. Honestly, I've only ever used the stock ones, so I haven't ever seen any problem with it. And I haven't seen those barbells leak past a single O-ring. The only time I've ever seen one have a problem with them was when people didn't put them in. Order head alignment pins for my 5.3, and of course they don't fit. Are they the, it's basically a wrapped piece of steel, so that has an opening in it. Can you pinch it down to make it work, or are they just not even close? Richard, when you're wiring up an engine for the dyno, what is your process? We have normally what it is like if we put an LS on the dyno, we put the motor up there, bolt all of that on. We have a Holley wiring harness that goes to our Holley HP that's dedicated either to a LS1 style, meaning a 28X or a 24X or a 58X. The harnesses are different because the sensors are different. And then we just plug the harness into the ECU. And, well, we do that after we hook everything up on the engine. So the harness itself will have a couple of grounds, a couple of powers, a couple of ignition ons, and then it'll plug into the coil packs, the crank sensor, the cam sensor, the TPS, the IAC, the various things. And once you get all those hooked up, then we plug it in. We always leave the fuses out and then put the fuses in as the last thing that we do before we're ready to start. The Chevette comes to rear wheel drive. Okay. 2.2 liter S10, cheap and easy to come by with the, what is the little 2.2 engine that's in there? Why do I always forget that one? Because the Iron Duke, that's what it is. I knew I would think of it. I did a search for S10s because I was also looking for Fieros and things that have that similar engine in there. The Saab 2.8 is a GM high feature small block 302 with E303 cam and torquer intake, about 330 horsepower. Does it have stock? Does it have a stock cylinder heads on it? Trying to, let's see. Data, documents, dyno results. .302. Big head test 1. FR. So the stock head on R302, a stock head with an RPM air gap and a 264 cam and a 650 Demon was 306 horsepower. So Victor Jr. might be a little bit more than that. I would kind of be an E303 cam. Yeah, I think a little less than that, maybe. An Iron Duke, yeah. Have you or anyone you know tested Blueprint engine heads about a pair of 195s Gen 1s, but their exhaust for claims seem extremely optimistic? I've run Blueprint heads, and they've run them a bunch for Engine Masters. I have a set on the Ford right now. Is there a specific brand of injector you prefer on LSs for E85? Not really. Guys have listed all kinds of injectors. I have the biggest injectors I have are the snake eater ones. Otherwise, I usually go from that's a 1500 cc. Otherwise, I'll go down to an 80, which is a Deco, and you can get this from lots of different people. It also has 4 speeds and some Chevettes. I saw that. Put a Weber on the inlet side of the AMR 500 and then quad supercharged some random 4-cylinder. Yeah, K-Series Honda would need 4 of those, certainly. $200 CFM at 500 lift, Carl. Is that what you're saying? And that's on the exhaust side? What do you think of the Phytech Ultimate EFI system versus the Holley Terminator X or even the new Aces EFI? I've never done anything with the Aces EFI or the Phytech. The guys at Westech have, but I never have. Only the Holley ECU is the one that I've run. Toyota Yaris might be a good cheap and boost with the MR engine. Not sure capability. I think it's a 1NZ FE. Yeah, we ran a turbo on one, but it's it's makes decent power ready. My second car was an '86 Celebrity with an Iron Duke. I have a 502 Marine engine, stroked at 540. I want to use twin turbos. How much cost should I put into the crank kit? It's a 20-foot boat, not the same kind of abuse as I would get in a car. Are you upgrading it? Are you putting a different rotating assembly in it? A steel crank would be a good idea. I don't know how much power you're trying to make, like how much power you think is it a V drive? Is it JED? Is it an out drive? If it's an out drive, you have to think about those too for a motor like that. Does anybody know the peak CFM of a Gen 5 4x4 peanut port heads? I thought that they were around 240. I kind of remember that. I have some results of the airflow test that we did with those. How about Gen 2 LT1 injectors and fuel pump for E85? I don't think a Gen 2 LT1 injector is very big, is it? Particularly for E85. But if you're asking me which ones I would use for that application, then I would put 80s on it, and depending on how much power you're trying to make. Fun for the Yaris or XB since they have the first 2 generations. Yep. Iron Duke versus Trophy 4-cylinder. The next new engine on the dyno needs to be Toyota. The early Scion XB is a Yaris motor, right? It's a 1NZ, but not the later one. The later one had a 2.5. A couple years ago, you gave me advice on our build, and it was exactly what the shop had done to it. The cam LC might have been a bit wider. Engine dyno still. So what are we doing here? We are at 70. Should I make an adapter? 70% are saying that yes, go the adapter route. When I was in high school, my neighbor had a Camaro Berlinetta with an Iron Duke and an automatic. That would be fairly sluggish. Had 2.5 Fiera for a while, and I found one that already had a stock 350. Am I surprised that the 350 wouldn't break traction? Wow, that's surprising. It should have enough torque to do that, but all the weight is over the back, so it should hook up, right? Next engine on the Dyno needs to be a slant 6. I do have one of those. First car's an 89 Grand Am with a 2.5. Iron Duke and an S10. An Iron Duke S10 would be good too, just because it's a little truck, so you can always use truck stuff. You can always use a truck. Although, what kind of fuel mileage does an Iron Duke get? Does anybody have one that they've driven around for a long time? V8 Fiero. Yeah, I don't think that's what he meant by stock. I think he meant the motor was stock. Yeah, my tire is one of my rear tires in the truck is about to delaminate, and it's also burned all the way down to the cords in one spot. Chevy Lover, Rabbit truck. Yeah, I do like the Rabbit trucks. Samurai. I was also looking at the Samurais and the Sidekicks, or is that what they're? Is that what the other version is? .5 Tech 4 was basically the Iron Duke with a single injector. Your Blazer got low 20s? Okay. When I like to hear the engine rev on the AM radio. Need a little bit of a filter on that, right? If you're making an adapter, would it be better to make one for the more common engine platform? Not for a Honda, because I already have the Sprint, and it's already a factory one, and I love it. So I don't want it to sit there anymore. I want it to go on something and run. And it's just a plate. It should not be rocket science. Especially an Iron Duke. You had an Iron Duke in an 18-foot ebb tide boat? That seems wildly underpowered. If I wanted to keep stock LQ4 crank, and what is throw rods and pistons in it? If you have to throw rods and pistons in it, are you putting other stock Gen 3 things in there? If you're putting Gen 4 stuff in there, it needs to be rebalanced. I used to have a Fiero with an Iron Duke and automatic and would get 27 to 28. That's really good. You can get a kit that turns the Jetta into a truck. Hoping for 15 miles per gallon with my van in the 300. Yeah, my truck is stuck right cruising down the freeway, like down to West Tech. It's 18, high 18s, low 19s. First car is a 65 Comet with a Hypo 289. Those are good looking cars. Oh, they were 3-liter Tech 4s. Is that like a Tech 9? Now you pay money to get engine sound through the factory sound system. Let's see. Someone needs to make a V-twin kit with those AMR blowers. Plenty of bikes out there. Yeah, I've seen not V-twins, but I've seen twin blowers on VW applications. Looking for a 73 Grand Am. Yeah, that's a good one. Or Grand Prix. I had a Fiero with an Iron Duke and a 5-speed and 35 miles per gallon. That's really good. Three-liter Mercruiser, 140 horsepower. That's good. I vote for the sprint motor in a Geo. I've come to the conclusion that it's the best of both worlds. The back section of the hatch by a fiberglass insert to make it a mini truck. Oh, that's good. Uh, 98 LTD. Your 80 millimeter throttle body is good, except I don't see anything listed there for what intake manifold you would be running an 80 millimeter throttle body on, because the number of intake manifolds that will accept an 80 millimeter throttle body, there's not a lot of them for a 5-liter Ford anyway. So they're talking about the Jetty Utes. I think that's probably more involved than I would want to do just to test the blower on a motor, but wish that the Ellis headed inline 4 for blueprint made into the magazine. I know. BBK makes one for a 5.0. I don't know. There are a couple of guys that did the big openings. TrickFlow had their box RAM or their box R intake manifold that had a 90 on it, and there were some others that you could put 90s on. I think that the high RAM from Holley is a 90 or a 102. The SRT head on 2.5, 2.2 would be better. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Not then if you do that, then you can't use the AMR 500 on it. You should do a 90s 460 video at some point on the stock Cobra Hood style EFI intake manifold. Stock Cobra Hood style EFI. I don't know what that is. The only 460 EFI induction, factory induction that I've ever seen is a truck. Just got here. What did I miss? Well, the question was at the beginning, should I, and that's what the poll is, should I buy a Metro to put an AM500 on, AMR 500 little blower on, or should I just make the adapter to put my sprint motor up on the engine dyno, my turbo sprint motor? With the turbo sprint motor, we have a turbo or a blower, and then turbo and a blower, which is even better. The funky 460 throttle body elbow. Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's the truck one, right? Factory 250, 350, 460 EFI intake, yeah. Windsor T5 that bolts into in versus an LS1 T56, both cost the same. I would rather have a T56 than I would a T5. And it's weird that a T5 costs the same. Yeah, T56 would be a lot stronger than a factory T5. Should do a video featuring that versus a dual plane. On the truck motors that you're talking about on the 460, I think that the dual plane is going to win. My question would be where in the RPM range might that EFI intake manifold be better? Because the elbow is not going to do anything for you unless the elbow is attached. Well, even then, it has to go into a common plenum. So it'd be interesting to see. I've never run that EFI setup. Yeah, Burns, I agree. I wouldn't ever do a head upgrade on an early 8-valve block. If I was going to go the 4-valve route, I would just go the 4-valve route by swapping that motor in. Was it Burns? Was it a lot of work to do the 4-valve upgrade, to do the head upgrade on the early 8-valve bottom end? Seems like it's more work than, it'd be a lot easier just to swap another motor in. I want to see that factory truck manifold that makes peak torque at an alleged 2,000 RPM. Is that where it says that it makes peak torque at? I can make a manifold make peak torque at 2,000 RPM, but it's not going to look like that truck manifold. Plenum is 180-degree style. So does it have a divider all the way through the elbow and then down into the manifold? Even if it did, it would still have to have a common plenum before it goes into the runners. Change the settings to all messages. Let's see, somebody's saying something here. Change the settings to all messages. It's in the line next to the scissors. Is that for me? We're going to go to, we can go to live chat. I can do that. Or that might be for the other people that are looking at. Yeah, it's like doing the Volvo head on the 2.3. It takes machining to do it correctly. People are talking about that, and I was interested in that, but not that interested in it. It's pity the 5-speed behind the 5.4 doesn't fit the 5-liter Orbera. Just trying to sell one. Would I need to do a tune if I swapped out the stock LS1 intake for an LS6? Probably not. I would drive that around like that. The EFI 300 has the longest runners I've seen on the factory truck. They are long. I was following somebody on Facebook that is doing the LS swap on the 300. So I've been following along as he's been doing that. And it's, I was just trying to lend some enthusiasm to him and tell him how awesome it was. Does anyone know which would suit boost better? 210, 200 at 50, 219, 219. None of them will suit boost better. You're not going to be happy with an asymmetrical cam, but I would be interested in you having me, or you telling me what this application is and then what you're trying to do with it. Is it something that you want just to be as a smooth, idle daily driver? You know, I'm putting a small turbo on it. I'm only running 7 pounds. That's all I care about, kind of thing. Then you just pick your cam accordingly. But neither one of those are better for a turbo or a boost application. The cam just does what the cam does, whether it's a single pattern or in your case an asymmetrical turbo, a reverse pattern. Neither of which I'm a huge fan of, but both of them will work with boost. We'll be opening up the Explorer upper to accept an 80 millimeter. It's not going to be overkill. It's not going to do anything because the airflow restriction in a stock Explorer, you could make it 200 millimeters and it's still going to be, the intake manifold is still going to be restrictive. It doesn't matter what size the throttle opening is. Specs I've seen say that the 460 truck manifold makes torque 2,000 to 2,200. Okay. .54 bell housing is the same as a Coyote and Godzilla. Richard, have you ever done any testing on a single turbo setup regarding the merge from both banks into a single scroll turbo inlet? So I'm assuming that there's going to be more to this. I'm still rocking the NA 8-valve head. Okay. Where the test is a T-style pour merge versus a nice parallel merge into the turbine That says I'm very interested in doing due to engine packaging. Are the merge that you're talking about into the turbine are you talking about the housing merge into the turbine, or are you talking about the two legs of the Y coming up to feed the hot side of the turbo? It's only few camshafts available for the inline 6-cylinder 4-liter Aussie engines. Okay. ATM will have a centrifugal supercharger, but 10 pounds of boost. Eventually, we'll have a Gen 3 GT45, GT3584, and hopefully 400 kilowatts. So I myself would not pick either one of those cams. If this is still the same cam question, guy. If you, yeah, you are. I would pick a dual pattern cam favoring exhaust over intake. Carl saying single pattern cams rock. Dino's in the house. Dean, the dance machine. Anyone see what Torque Racing did with his 8-into-1 equal length header exhaust manifold? Does anybody see? I haven't seen it. Secondaries bank 1 and 2 merge into the turbine housing. That merge a port T where there is a crosstalk with no proper merge versus a proper merge, like a parallel merge. None of that is making sense visually to me. Maybe send me a picture or something so I can see what you're talking about. How's our poll doing? 71%. What camshaft would you recommend for a 700 to 800 horsepower 5.3 single turbo full size truck for street and strip? A Truck Norris. Something, or you could get a Chupacabra or Summit makes one, or Cam Motion. Everybody has one that's like that, similar to that now. So I would put a mild camshaft in that, and it will work good. I just dropped my phone and scratched the screen. You didn't have the screensaver cover thing on it? Which, can you think of a way to adapt a 2.3-liter Ford Lima to a modular motor bell housing? I've never even looked at what the pattern looks like. I have to look at that. Like, I have to set the bell housing down and draw everything out, and then set the other one down, and then I'll just center where the crankshaft would be and try to figure out, oh yeah, that's not going to work because all those things overlap. But I haven't honestly looked at that side by side. Disco Dean. Yep. Been in the garage more this weekend than my house. Did an incomplete transmission swap on a friend's truck. So you're some of the way there. Is that what it is? Can you do a video on that process? On what, you dropping your phone? I'll do a video on the I'll do a video on the adapter for the Sprint one. If you have room to increase the exhaust duration and lift, you have room to increase the intake duration too. Yeah, he might not have to for what he's doing, but bell housing adapter, yeah. They refurbished my bike. It's an older road racing bike. Okay, cool. Dipstick tube doesn't fit and the engine won't start. That's not good. Get a hold of QuickTime Performance. That's who did the RB bell housing. It was nice that they had already done that. Made life a lot easier. That I've had for a few years now that I haven't run the RB motor with yet. Bo, quite honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about I've seen turbos mounted 90 degrees to the airflow on the exhaust manifold, but all the exhaust goes through the turbo because it can only go through the turbo. It can't escape anywhere else. Is it ideal? No. Or would guys use that in Formula One or Indy? No. Is it still going to make boost? Yes. And it's going to make power if it makes boost. So actually, in the future, would it be possible to test velocity stacks on a carb? So, like the stub stack deal that they used to sell, the insert, that's become much less necessary with the newer design carburetors. But it was definitely a gain on the older style with the choke horn and stuff on them. Like to see the David Vizard velocity stack versus a short and tall standard style stacks on a Holly 4-barrel. I'd have to see what those look like. I can tell you that putting an entry on the carburetor definitely changes the power, and it definitely changes the signal to the carburetor because we've tested that many times. Took 5 hours to remove a knockoff from a Dayton wire wheel today. Man. But what would the impact be regarding scavenging and crosstalk between the heads? I don't really think you have to worry about scavenging when you have a turbo motor. You're not going to have exhaust scavenging more than likely because you probably don't have equal length long tube headers on it anyway, right? And honestly, I think you're worried if you have all the exhaust going to the turbo, you've done like 90% of your job. You shouldn't worry about the other small percent about things like that. You should just revel in having the boost and then running an intercooler and then getting the tune right and all that. I've been liking the Honda K24 engine. It is really good, but it's very expensive to convert to rear-wheel drive. Yeah, it is. That's not an easy deal. A nice Y shape would be ideal. There's room. Yeah, you gotta do whatever you gotta do. Bo, if you look at some of the old V8, early V8 turbo setups, one was essentially a stock exhaust manifold with a cross under going into the bottom or the side or the back of another dedicated manifold that they made, but they were just joining all the exhaust together. And then all that exhaust went out. It finds its way. It doesn't need signs or directions. And then they mounted a turbo on that other cast manifold. So again, not ideal, but all of the exhaust will go into the turbo. You did equal length headers? Okay. Well, you don't need to worry about scavenging. You just need to worry about getting all the exhaust to the turbo. Bell mouth is what he's talking about. Yeah. What is the strangest combo that made surprising amount of power that you never expected? The most surprising one was the first Big Bang 4.8 liter. Dave was saying that the tall and short stacks are not great and his worked better. I love David, but that statement doesn't surprise me at all. Do you have any plans on running either your 2.2 or 2.5 on nitrous? Water meth, not to any crazy levels, just reasonable levels. Yeah, we'll run nitrous on it. We'll hit it with a 50 shot or something. And I will try water meth on it also, just to see. I don't really expect it to do. I mean, I expect it to do exactly what water methanol injection has done in the past. But we'll run it on there because that's an option for people. Especially guys trying to run maybe that stock intercooler, which is not as good as it could be. L99 or LS3, both of them are good. I use a flat 3-in-1 merge for packaging, but there wasn't enough height on the hood to get a proper merge. 4.8 Big Bang was fun. That was a really fun night. Do you have any 3800 performance parts? Yeah, blowers and pulleys and hubs and stuff. Was a combo that flopped horribly when huge power was expected. There have been some. I was actually just looking at the and it didn't flop spectacularly. It just didn't make the power that I thought it was going to. I was looking at a motor that somebody else built that we ended up making 1,000 horsepower with. It was a 5.3, but it had a high ram. It had AFR heads. It had a decent sized camshaft in it and stuff. But I'm thinking that it must have been low compression because it only made it was a 5.3 that had all this stuff on it and still made 450 or 460 horsepower or something. And I just thought that was really low of a power output to start out with. I thought it should have been up near 500. Julius, all right, man, we'll see you. First upgrade is independent rear suspension. That'll be good. That'd be good stuff. I got to go tomorrow and get tires on my truck. It's unsafe. Ooh, I ordered some parts today from the Summit guys. Lots of parts, actually. I want to see a 371 blower on Metro 3-cylinder. We looked around for little blowers like that, Dan. I was looking for a 371 would have worked or a 471 because I really wanted to do a blower like that on the Trophy 4-cylinder because it's period correct. But those are not cheap anymore. Jeff, I got the 396 back together once and tried to run it again. And then it dropped a valve guide. Still ran, but just not very well. They also had that 53 series engine, 353 blower. Okay. But I was looking at those older blowers. Those are not cheap. Yeah, Jeff, it's not cool. So I have another set of heads that I'm going to put on. I'm done trying to make those heads work anymore. So I have another set of heads that I bought that are not cheap because they're early closed chamber, big valve, big block Chevy heads, which are, let's face it, these heads are, 40, 50, 60 years old. So it's, I'm sure that they weren't designed to last forever. But I have another set. I was originally going to put them on the 454. So now these will probably go on the 396. And I need to get this thing together and done and run and wash my hands of it. Probably weighs more than the whole Metro engine. Yeah, I wanted to put that little blower on the Trophy 4-cylinder, but I'm definitely going to hopefully put the AMR 500 on the Sprint motor or Metro motor. So go ahead and close our poll at 73%. We're going to close that out on a high because that's kind of the direction I want to go rather than spend a whole bunch of money. I'd like to have a Metro. It'd be cool. But I don't know if it's like $3,000 school, which are the ones that I'm looking at kind of are. Have you tried one of the LS firing order cams on a Gen 1 small block? I have not the LS firing order. We've done the 4.7 swap on things, and just doing the swap by itself is not a power changer. I tried an M62 on a Trophy. Yeah, I thought about doing that, and I might make a manifold for that just because it's something you can get in a wrecking yard, and a guy might do that, although I don't think there's probably just about a handful of Trophy 4-cylinder guys out there. But it's something you could do. The problem is that a Trophy 4-cylinder guy would be much more likely to do this as a carbureted deal. And so I'd have to build an adapter to go into the either an M60. I think I would pick an M90, but Dan, they have Metros that are $300 also, but they're all junk and not running. Take a look at the Saabs. I'll take a look at the Saab motors. We had customers leave them at the dealership because the repairs are too high. Yeah. I know. I'd like to find somebody I need to find a buddy that has a a wholesaler's license or somebody that has access to the police impound stuff. Would you happen to know how the Ford GT gets 600 plus horsepower out of the 3.5 and no one seems to get close to that on their EcoBoost projects? Why aren't they getting that? I wouldn't think 600 horsepower would be that hard. And does anybody know, is there something different about the Ford GT motor? Is it a different version of the EcoBoost? I mean, a 3.5, you should be 600 horsepower should be very easy out of a 3.5 4-valve motor. That should not be an issue at all. I mean, 600 horse. We got 600 horsepower out of the 3800 with very little boost. On that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. Right now, I'm working on a Coyote versus LS. So we'll see how that goes. I'll see you guys all tomorrow.